hear me? Can you hear me all right? Do you want me to? Is that Trev?
Yeah.
There's Trev. Yeah, that's what I was telling you about.
That's Trev?
That's Trev, yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't my class he was skipping.
Oops, didn't mean to pull your cover there. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, he's in my son's band. Well, he was in my son's band, Second Avenue. Hot cover band, very good cover band. Are you playing? Have you got a band here?
Kind of. I'm in the choir.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Very good.
I'm helping out with some of the people.
Oh, very good. Yeah, my son, when he was given the choice of being in the choir or the band, mandatory choice in middle school, he wanted to be in the choir, but he couldn't spell it, so he ended up in the band. That's a hard one to spell. I just brought a bunch of stuff here. This is the latest Sun magazine, and you're welcome to have these, and I'll sign them to diminish their value if you insist.
I got one at home, I'll go get it. I got one at home.
You can bring anything you like, and this one's got 7 Days in a Sea Creature Town, which is my latest. Is this better? Would you rather I do that? Do you like that better?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that then. So anyway, well, it's nice to be back in Norfolk, which we couldn't determine last time whether it was the northern fork of the river or the northern folk people.
No, the fork of the river.
So why did they spell it F-O-L-K?
Somebody screwed up in the post office.
Is that what it was?
It was spelled North Fork at one time.
I'll be darned.
Somebody in the post office screwed it up.
Is that what it is?
That's what the story is.
Oh.
That's the story.
Oh, well, now I'm glad we straightened that out. So anyway,
You can continue the myth if you like.
well, I just think it's kind of interesting, that's all. I just kind of, because you see the word Volk. This is, the Germans settled this part of the world. You see that all over the place. It means people, the folk. The Volkswagen is the people's wagon, people's car. Invented, of course, or sponsored by Adolf Hitler. Yeah, well, I think that's true, isn't it true? Yeah, I wouldn't make stuff like that up. So this is things I like about America. What I'm going to do, what I want to do is I don't want to bore you and just read. I'm just going to read little bits of things. We can talk about them if you want. But this is things I like about America. It's out of print. I think they're expensive now. Like the last one I saw was like $30. This is the only one I've got. But this is my first one. It's my favorite one. Did you guys have to read Whirlaway? Did she make you read Whirlaway? Did you hate it? Was it too weird for you? It's a weird novel. But, you know, it took me about 20 years to get right. Well, I mean, it took me 20 years to finish it. I don't know if I got it right. I'd love to read a whole. Last time I think I read a whole, because you give me 45 minutes. That's unheard of. Most of the time you give 15 minutes, you know, and they kick you out. But anyway, so I lost my virginity with a sociopath. She was a sociopath. I didn't know it. And it really did change my life. And I wanted to write about it because I think that's interesting. My number one rule for literature is that it should be interesting, should have some real firecrackers in it. Well, that's a good story. But I was so heartbroken and I took it so personally. It took me a long time to treat, to get this right. And I wrote it comically. I made fun of it. So, and it's a long story. I like to read the whole thing. It's one of my favorite stories, but I'll just read a little bit. But it's a true story. These are all essays, personal essays as they call them. I graduated from high school when I was 17 and immediately moved out of my parents' house into a 2-bedroom apartment on Central Avenue in East San Diego with my best friend Dewey Daldorf, who had recently become a devout Christian. Dewey quickly grew tired of my secular and festive exploits and my inability to see the light, and moved into a little hut by himself on Redondo Court in Mission Beach, where he could spend more intimate time with his Nazarene girlfriend, though it turned out that she hated the beach. I couldn't afford the rent, so my two good high school buddies, Woodchuck and Goldie, moved in with me and shared a room. Woodchuck had a job as a parts delivery driver, and Goldie, my second best friend, named for his prominent gold front tooth, was welding iron grill work in Old Town. We filled the place with bong smoke and beer cans and dreams of beautiful or even passively attractive, or even after 7 or 8 bongs and a dozen cans of beer, two-legged women, while Dark Side of the Moon played over and over on the little Panasonic stereo by the window. I was working full-time at Pine Manor Convalescent Hospital downtown, which was packed with attractive young women in short nylon dresses. I joked with them and stared at them and imagined that I could skillfully conceal my erections. Then one day I was headed down the hospital corridor, about to turn the corner into the break room, when I heard what sounded like a donkey being dragged by a tugboat into a river. A new aide in crisp white sat at a table, her mouth open, the tormented braying sounds emanating thence. Someone, perhaps she, had apparently told a joke. She was laughing all by herself. Her mouth snapped shut when she saw me, and she stared at me as if I were a stuffed duckling dinner with dumplings and buttered baby carrots. No one had ever stared at me like this before. I was a skinny drip with pimples and glasses. Her eyes looked funny, and I thought she must be nearsighted. I felt so buffoonishly unnerved and stick-figured and cranberry-faced with sudden prickly rash in my shorts that I moved straight to the snack machine and pretended she did not exist. Later that evening, she came over to my section, stuck her head in the room where I was working, and smiled at me. "Hi there," she said. "Hi. I was wondering if you could help me. What is it? I've got to lift up old Mrs. Fatface, or whatever her name is, in 213. Mrs. Ferris? Yeah, whatever." She tipped her head and threw back her long, tawny, center-parted, dyed-from-brunette hair. "I need some help." "Okay," I said. I followed her down the hall. She moved gracelessly with a mince in her step, like an arthritic geisha or a grenade victim from a foreign war. "My name's Bonnie Newton," she said, turning her head and opening her pale, masculine mouth at me. I introduced myself, making sure not to shake her hand, because I had recently read a magazine article that stated if you wanted to sleep with a woman, never shake her hand. "Why don't we take a break?" said Bonnie, after we had taken care of Mrs. Ferris. "You up for a break?" She smoked True 100's plastic-filtered cigarettes with so little tar and nicotine in them it made you wonder what was the point of smoking them. I smoked Marlboro Reds in the box. We were all alone in the break room with a Pepsi machine humming. Her weird, fuzzy eyes were like puddles of shoe polish, and the sharply arched eyebrows above them were darker and more unnatural still, as if she had plucked them completely out, dyed the hairs individually the blackest, most raven black, then replaced each one, inserting the follicles into the pores with a good eyebrow glue. I couldn't think of anything to say. She leaned over and delivered a chilly, scrotum-shrinking whisper in my ear. "I don't want you to think I'm just a nurse's aide," she said. "What are you?" "I'm an actress," she said. "Oh, really? Like movies or what?" "I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild," she said with a haughty jerk of the chin. "That's great. I've been involved with the Old Globe," she added, "and I've done some movies." "Really? Which ones?" "I had a bit part when I was 16 in Double Damnation. Did you see that?" "No." "Jason Robards was in that, and Keenan Wynn. I got his autograph." You probably don't know who any of those people are, because this takes place in 1973. Jason Robards. You don't know Jason Robards, do you? Keenan Wynn? No. No. They were actors, though. They were prominent actors in their day. "I got his autograph," she nodded rapidly with a sort of squinty electrical wince. "And I've had 3 auditions this year," she continued hastily, "and I'll be doing Old Globe Theater and some summer stock starting in July. Plus this guy's supposed to call me about some modeling shots." "Wow, you're a model too." "Well," she grated in her dried out and unmelodic voice, batting her lashes, "it's like acting. I'd rather act, but you never know. Somebody might see the pictures or recommend me. The money's good." "You're sure pretty enough to be a model," I said. "Say," she said, "why don't you come over tonight and have a glass of wine with me? Are you busy?" "Not really. I'm new in town and I haven't made any friends yet. I'll give you a ride. I have a car. Save the gas. I don't live far." Bonnie flew down A Street in the left lane in a ratty little canvas-top MGB. She didn't know how to drive. I wanted to grab the wheel to keep her from taking us headfirst into a bridge pillar. "I'm superstitious," she shouted over the Blue Oyster Cult song playing on KPRI. And you know Blue Oyster Cult, don't you, Trev? You don't know Keenan Wynn, but you know Blue Oyster Cult. I believe that the right lane is bad luck. Are you superstitious? Not too much. I'm also afraid of black cats, she shouted, tearing down the darkness of Florida Canyon and skillfully evading a crate of lettuce that had tumbled off the back of a truck. And nuns. Nuns? I looked back at the lettuce heads scattered like money all over the road with dodging headlights dancing all around them. I tried to be a nun once. I was too much of a rebel, though. I have a problem with authority. You were in a convent. That's where my modeling career started. How? At the top of the canyon, Bonnie ran a stop sign, and as my head whirled around on my neck and my fingers sank into the armrest, and the onslaught of traffic converged upon us in our final seconds on Earth, she explained to me how her modeling career had begun at a nunnery. One night, me and 5 other girls sneaked out the window and drank wine and kissed with boys from the Votech down by the river. When they caught us, we had to dress this big dead nun for penance. She was stiff as a board, and while we were lifting her from the table, the hoist snapped, and she sat straight up and looked at us, and we all took off out the door. I ran away that night, hitchhiked south, and got picked up by a guy who wanted to take pictures of me. She shook her head regretfully. My granny never forgave me for that. Why? Because you left the convent? No, because she saw the pictures. It was a motorcycle magazine. You know, I showed my tits. Big deal. I think she was just jealous. She glanced down at her prominent breasts. They seemed like 2 unknown worlds to me, crying out to be explored. Where was this? Minnesota. Is that where you were born? No, I was born here in San Diego. My father was in the Navy. You were born in Balboa Hospital? I guess so. I don't remember. She took a left on Landis Street, roared into a lot, and parked crookedly around the back of an apartment complex, which through the shaggy silver silhouettes of eucalyptus trees overlooked Balboa Park. I entangled myself from the seatbelt and climbed out of her death trap of a sports car. This is a nice-looking place, I said. I was lucky to find it. Where were you before? Topanga Canyon. I had some work up there. The rank, slow perfume of potted geraniums drifted up to my nostrils. The hairy eucalyptus trees smelled like cats in heat. Off to the east, the Romano-colored moon was trapped behind a cloud for a moment before it finally broke and lifted free. Bonnie led me up a flight of concrete shelf stairs. Wind chimes tinkled and I almost kicked over a hibachi. She stopped for a moment to jingle a key and give the door a gentle shove, and I followed her into a hazy green room veiled with the smell of Charlie perfume. The low pile carpet was chlorine blue, like a public swimming pool. A laundry basket sat on the floor, and feminine articles were laid over the back of the couch. Pink and yellow bras, pink and yellow panties. 2 cantaloupes on our oval dining room table sent up a musky fragrance, like a fruity version of the eucalyptus trees. "Excuse the mess," she said. "You're my first visitor." She indicated the panty-decorated couch. "Sit down." I took a seat amid all the heavenly underwear. On the floor across from me was a wooden needlepoint rocking chair and probably 200 record albums arranged in milk crates under an impressive NASA black Marantz stereo. From the opposite wall, a large pastel of a woman in a broad sun hat, a print I think everyone owned in 1973, gazed down upon me with blithering needle diamond serenity. "Why don't you take your shoes off?" she said, kicking off her own. I don't know how anybody can stand to wear clothes. I think deep down I'm a nudist. When I was a little girl, when I was a little girl, I used to go around naked all year, even in the winter. In Minnesota? She bent over and showed me her ample white breasts. "Do you like apple wine?" Yeah. It's Annie Greenspring's my favorite. "Put on an album if you want." Bonnie had what I considered to be good taste in music. Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Neil Young, Robin Trower, the older, more obscure albums of Pink Floyd, all arranged alphabetically. A good sign in a person, I decided. I extracted metal from its sleeve and set the needle in the groove. "Good choice," she shouted from the kitchen. "So," I shouted back to her, "how did you end up at Pine Manor? It was in the paper. What about you?" I took a crotch sniff off a pair of her clean panties. "Took a class in high school." "How old are you anyway?" I cleared my throat. 17. I thought you were in your 20s, she said, swinging around the corner with 2 glasses of wine. Why, you're just a baby. How old are you? I said. 22. That's not too old, is it? I hope you like ice. I thought of Woodchuck and Goldie sitting at the table smoking their bong, pining over women and wondering where I was. They wouldn't believe it if they saw it. I took a gulp of the wine, good, cold, sweet, soda pop wine. We played a game of Scrabble and drank more wine. Bonnie was a poor speller and made up. Sorry, her name's Bonnie, isn't that? But I didn't know you then. Is that a real name? I changed her name. I think that was a real. No, Becky was her real name. That's a shame I couldn't have forgotten.
That's my real name.
Is it really?
No, I'm kidding.
We played a game of Scrabble and drank more wine. Bonnie was a poor speller and made up words. Voogle. I was out of Marlboro, so I smoked her true menthol 100s, which were so low in tar and nicotine I couldn't tell if they were lit or not. And then it goes on and on and on like that, but it gets more and more action-packed as we go. I just want to read little pieces. I don't want to bore you, see. So, any questions about that? It was a complete disaster. It changed my worldview, which is what, you know, youth will do to you. So, looks like practice is going well. Okay, this is another really long. This is 501 Minutes of Christ. I think it's out of print too, but it doesn't sell as well. It doesn't, as a collector's item, it's not as valuable because people get confused about the title. They think it's a religious tract. They think it's some kind of book about it. And it is a spiritual journey. I'm not completely, I try to go chronologically, but am I alienating people already? What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So this is, this is just another collection of personal essays. Why don't I read this one? This is a short one. I could read this one. I'll read this one. This is a short one. I might be able to read it all. Yeah, it's a short one. Advice to William Somebody. I can't count the number of times I have officially assembled the equipment to take my life. A knife, a handgun, a plastic bag, a bottle of codeine, and a fifth of vodka. My motivations are never quite clear. Perception of failure, futility, a sense of irremediable isolation, MTV. Nothing everyone else hasn't suffered through. Yet I tend to magnify my gloomy outlook onto a driving picture of the end of the world. I can't seem to remember that despair is a temporary state, a dark storm along the highway, that if I can just stick it out, keep the wipers going and my foot on the gas, I will make it through to the other side. Once while driving across the country writing suicide notes in my head for no good reason at all, I pulled off for gas in Las Vegas, New Mexico. I remembered exactly a Phillips 66, pump number 7, $1.09 a gallon. When I went inside to pay, everyone in the store was speaking Spanish. I paid and asked the skinny kid behind the register where the coffee was. He pointed to the back. I used the restroom, then went over and got the coffee. I had decided to drive on through to Phoenix, approximately 1 million miles. The store was big and new and sterile and hopeless, like the blossoming commercialism of everything. I set the large cup of coffee on the counter. Anything else? Asked the kid. Pack of Newport 100s. He slid the cigarettes across, looking at me. How much? I said. $2.14. He said. For both? I asked. Coffee's on me, he said. I didn't ask him why. Maybe he was quitting after the shift. Maybe it was store policy, free coffee with every fill-up. Maybe he recognized my turmoil and understood the power of kindness from a stranger. Or maybe he represented the invisible divinity that runs through all humanity like an old FDR radio speech and only appears when you need it the most. Whatever the case, I drove on through to Phoenix without another thought of my demise. Another time in the other Las Vegas where I couldn't get a job and was already 500 in the hole and the air stank with shallow unfriendliness and mistrust. I was riding my bicycle down to the union office to see if they had found me a job. I had paid them $200 a month ago and they still hadn't gotten me any work. The union never did find me a job. I finally broke one of their picket lines. You know, sorry, I'm 500 in the hole and my rent's coming up. That day I was riding along in the hot June sun, secretly thinking about throwing myself in front of a truck when I coasted by a garage right across from Bob Stupak's Vegas World, now defunct, long defunct hotel and casino. And a black mechanic sitting on a tire in the dark, cool interior smiled at me and put up his thumb. I don't think he understood how important that single gesture was, what it meant to me. I am ashamed to admit that I think so much about taking my life, and this has changed too. This is a period of my life that's very difficult. This has all changed, you know, matter of perspective and experience, obviously, and acceptance. I am ashamed to admit that I think so much about taking my life. I have no right. I am fit. I am independent. I am a member of a privileged society. A billion third world people would give their pituitary glands to be in my position. They would probably work hard and shut up for a minute and appreciate their lives. Count me among the querulous generation, the thankless legion, stewing alone in its own shadows. Count me among the growing multitude overwhelmed by the mysterious Black Plague. According to the experts, there are essentially two kinds of depression: exogenous, caused by an event outside the organism, like when your girlfriend leaves you or your best friend dies; and endogenous, which originates apparently unwarranted from some not yet understood biochemical imbalance. Both types are probably as old as consciousness. Widespread clinical chronic endogenous depression, however, is recent, coincidental with either music videos or the development of new antidepressant wonder drugs. He pointed to the back. I used the restroom, then went over and got the coffee. I had decided to drive on through to Phoenix, approximately 1 million miles. The store was big and new and sterile and hopeless, like the blossoming commercialism of everything. I set the large cup of coffee on the counter. "Anything else?" asked the kid. "Pack of Newport 100s. He slid the cigarettes across, looking at me. "How much?" I said. "$2.14, he said. "For both?" I asked. "Coffee's on me," he said. I didn't ask him why. Maybe he was quitting after the shift. Maybe it was store policy, free coffee with every fill-up. Maybe he recognized my turmoil and understood the power of kindness from a stranger. Or maybe he represented the invisible divinity that runs through all humanity, like an old FDR radio speech, and only appears when you need it the most. Whatever the case, I drove on through to Phoenix without another thought of my demise. Another time in the other Las Vegas, where I couldn't get a job and was already 500 in the hole and the air stank with shallow unfriendliness and mistrust, I was riding my bicycle down to the union office to see if they had found me a job. I had paid them $200 a month ago, and they still hadn't gotten me any work. The union never did find me a job. I finally broke one of their picket lines. You know, sorry, I'm 500 in the hole and my rent's coming up. That day I was riding along in the hot June sun, secretly thinking about throwing myself in front of a truck when I coasted by a garage right across from Bob Stupak's Vegas World, now defunct, long defunct hotel and casino. And a black mechanic sitting on a tire in the dark, cool interior smiled at me and put up his thumb. I don't think he understood how important that single gesture was, what it meant to me. I am ashamed to admit that I think so much about taking my life, and this has changed too. This is a period of my life that's very difficult. This has all changed, you know, matter of perspective and experience, obviously, and acceptance. I am ashamed to admit that I think so much about taking my life. I have no right. I am fit. I am independent. I am a member of a privileged society. A billion third world people would give their pituitary glands to be in my position. They would probably work hard and shut up for a minute and appreciate their lives. Count me among the querulous generation, the thankless legion, stewing alone in its own shadows. Count me among the growing multitude overwhelmed by the mysterious Black Plague. According to the experts, there are essentially two kinds of depression: exogenous, caused by an event outside the organism, like when your girlfriend leaves you or your best friend dies; and endogenous, which originates apparently unwarranted from some not yet understood biochemical imbalance. Both types are probably as old as consciousness. Widespread clinical Chronic endogenous depression, however, is recent, coincidental with either music videos or the development of new antidepressant wonder drugs and the armies of manufacturers and professionals eager to recommend and administer them. Americans are a stubbornly independent lot, descendants of pirates, Puritans, smugglers, and tax evaders, but we are surprisingly compliant when it comes to the offer of drugs. Here are the profiles of 4 chronically depressed people I know. Gene C., Prozac, whose wife is a tattooed cigar smoker who drives a pickup truck, has a job with the state making twice as much as him, reprimands him for even thinking she should cook dinner, though she doesn't know how to cook anyway, wants to compete with him wherever she can beat him, loathes him because he only thinks about one thing, and then expresses frustration when he refuses to commit romantically. Gene is quit working. He sits at home all day in front of his computer and day trades. My 86-year-old grandmother, Paxil, whose faculties have been steadily eroding for many years and whose continued longevity and precariously improving mood is almost entirely sustained by the miracle of modern medicine. She often expresses bewilderment as to why she is still alive. She cannot spell the word ocean backwards, though neither can I. According to my mother, she has recently been completely enrolled in Kaiser, which does not mean she was made into a sandwich. Although many elderly people conscripted into full-time hospital care must feel this way. Lena Lovitz, that's the name of the drug. I'm saying the name of the drug after the 16-year-old daughter of a friend of mine is 50 pounds overweight and the mother of a child out of wedlock. The father is long gone. Lena's 17-year-old sister also has a child out of wedlock and a prescription for Lovix. Both children still live at home. Lena spends a lot of time watching television. In the evening, she works part-time at McDonald's. My friend advises me, have children young so you won't be too old to raise your grandkids. My sister, Prozac, who shares my maddening passivity, which evinces itself alternately between rage and gloom, and who feels obligated to fulfill the role of the modern superwoman, raising 4 children, running a business, and driving a school bus part-time. She thinks Prozac is a panacea, and when she recommends it to me with that calm, glassy look in her eyes, I feel suddenly transported to the set of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Meanwhile, life is a cellular accident. Humans are only blobs of mutated chimp chromosomes. The sum of existence is a random chemical electromagnetic event. Death is the merciless end to a meaningless joke. Poverty is a stigma. Dependence is a psychological disorder. Love is something you find in someone else's underwear. The large rewards on earth go to the greedy, the pushy, the vicious, the base. Divorce is a happy solution to an antiquated institution. The television leaks its steady treacle of prurience, gross sentiment, concentrated doom, and pathetic idealism until we are vacant and numb, then promises relief and fulfillment through the consumption of 3-day erection tablets. An impossibly high standard of living can only translate into an impossibly high level of stress. Really, this is the thing that I think is making most people sick. It's very easy. Lewis Thomas wrote a book called Lives of a Cell, and in it he said, he's an MD, and he had a lot of beautiful biological and medical observations about daily life, but he said, happy people don't get sick. Most of us are, my back was, I wrote an essay about how terrible my back was. I couldn't walk for 30 years. I fought through it. It never occurred to me that the problem, the source that my back problem, it was not mechanical, it was stress-oriented. Once I figured it out, my back problems disappeared. But anyway, factor in the tremendous triumphs of technology, which have given many of us not only a mistaken assumption that life should be easy and pain-free, but also an illusion that we are now the captains of our fate. Spiritless primate voyagers spinning through a cooling gaseous accident with nothing better to do than nibble on Pringles potato chips and read Self magazine until the nonsensical end. And it is no wonder that we are the most medicated people on earth. I have known a dozen people who have taken their lives, all of them young, none of them justified. I remember the girl in number 1 who killed herself the day after I moved into a dilapidated and nearly empty apartment complex in Niagara Falls, New York. Though I'd only spoken to her once, I was horrified, struck hollow by the act. I met her father and brother that day on the stairs. They'd come to retrieve her belongings. They were haggard with grief and reached out to me for some explanation, as if I could offer one. I grew angry with the girl and her thoughtless infliction of pain on the ones who loved her. She had thought only of herself. She had quit the game in the middle. Like a spoiled child, she had thrown all her unopened Christmas packages out into the snow. Or I'll be leafing through a newspaper in a laundromat and see that William somebody has died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound at the age of 38, and I'll wonder with a little rip in my stomach, why couldn't he make it? Why couldn't he see the absolute permanence of his mistake? Why didn't he talk to someone? Why didn't he talk to me? I could have told him. Life is sacred. Suicide is wrong. You're going to die someday anyway. Why speed the inevitable? But when my own unendurable desolation descends, I don't seem to remember my indignation at the selfishness of the girl in number one, or my clear-eyed missionary advice to William somebody. All I want is out. The fact that I'm still alive amazes me every morning. I wish I had a psychological formula, a rescue kit to hand out to my fellow melancholics. I wish I could say, this is what saved me. But each time it's something different. Kindness from a stranger, lack of courage, obligation to parents, inability to write a good note. The possibility that I will have to start over again as a one-legged beggar in Tijuana, or a housefly hatching out of a Dairy Queen swirl of yellow hoodoo-doo-doo. Or I'll imagine the appearance of my corpse, its state of decomposition by the time I am found, which always reminds me of the footage of the Jonestown mass suicides and how silly those people looked, all swollen in polyester heaps and black at the fingertips, the ultimate in bad fashion. Recently, I took the worst trip of my life. It started out fairly well on a sunny early spring day in El Paso. I got on a Greyhound bus headed north. By the time I'd reached Colorado, I was consumed in the flames of a strep infection. My back was out and snow was falling by the foot. I got stuck in South Dakota for 3 days. I began to miss all the appointments I had made with friends along the way. I ended up in New York City not once but twice in a period of 24 hours. The second time hobbling in a pointless amoral fever around the labyrinth of the Port Authority bus terminal, talking to myself and smashing my fist into my face as hard as I could. I was trying to break teeth, draw blood, damage brains and vertebrae. People were staring at me, even the New Yorkers who were accustomed to the insane. All the destinations looked the same to me. All the buses were the same. I stopped a woman with a clipboard whose job it was to rescue idiot travelers lost in the Port Authority. Can you tell me when the next bus leaves? I said. Which bus? She said. It doesn't matter, I said. She seemed shocked, this woman who worked in the bowels of New York City, insane asylum of the world. How about L.A., I said. She looked at her sheet. 4 o'clock, she said, 3 hours. What about Washington, D.C.? Half an hour, she said, squinting at me, then I glanced at her clipboard. Gate 82, that's the Richmond bus. I got on the Richmond bus, and all the way down I plotted my death as the snow flowed starlight across the glass. I wondered what everyone would think when they heard the news. I wondered how my meager possessions would be distributed. I wondered who would care, who would laugh, who would secretly rejoice. I wondered if anyone would feel sorry for me, if anyone would miss me. We were soon approaching D.C., and I had done nothing but daydream about my hand. My neck was sore, my tooth was chipped, and my cheek was swollen to the eye. God, please just let me die. Then 3 kids boarded the bus, ball caps on sideways. They swaggered down the aisle. Each wore a new snow-white down jacket. I caught the dull nickel gleam of a gun handle in a waistband. 2 of the kids dropped into the seats directly behind me. They spoke loudly for everyone's benefit. What you looking at? Let me see that gun. You ain't afraid to show it? Look at laughter. I got a straight bead on the driver. The woman next to me blanched and flattened against her seat. I felt my bladder float up into my chest cavity. Time stopped and draped itself like a braided pearl net across the aisle. One of the kids stood up. I saw the driver's eyes freeze in the mirror. I pictured the massacre, photos in the next day's paper, my name misspelled, page 4. Life was suddenly sweet. I prayed with a coward's softness. The snow flew past the windows. Well, I went from frivolous, somewhat frivolous, and they lead you the way. But anyway, this is the book. People say, I read your book. And I said, which book was that? And they said, oh, you've written other ones. So this is the book. This is the one about the math professor in my hometown, my small hometown of Shadron, who came in August and in July. Anyway, he stayed not quite for a term. He disappeared one day, and they found him 3 months later, burned and bound to a tree on private ranch land, half a mile south of the campus. There were investigations, numerous investigations, none of which were satisfactory to me. I don't write true crime. I don't know anything about criminology, but it seemed to me that the rumors were flying. The story was not straight, and so I undertook to investigate the case myself. It took me 6 years to write. It's about much more than the mystery of his death. It's about my marriage to a Mexican woman. It's about my son, who we talked about a little bit before. I think I read one of the first 2 chapters the last time I was here. They're short, and it's hard to... It turns to dirt just past 10th Street, and we followed it until we came to a wooden sign that reads, May Queen Ranch. Sandy Bird's property, that's the rancher on whose body was found, that overlooks Shadron State College campus, most of the town in South Dakota on a clear day. The entire ranch is surrounded by barbed wire fence, some of it burned and not yet repaired from the fires of 2006. The fence that runs the length of the entrance site is not only intact, but electrified and tight. And the only place to pass here, unless you climb or crawl through the fence, is through the gates of the sign. The dirt road continues from there past a small trailer owned by Sandy Bird, the owner of the ranch. I didn't know who lived in this trailer for a long time, but I assumed because it was next to a large corral that the occupant was associated somehow with the ranch. I presumed that Slim Butts, who was the ranch hand who found him, or another cowhand lived there. Ranch employees often live on the ranches where they are employed. Few others would choose to live right next to a corral. The dirt road that passes this trailer, which sits at the entrance like a toll booth with a full view of all those who come and go, ends a quarter mile or so at Sandy's 2-level house. Its second floor encircled by a redwood deck. Sandy, I'm told, was once an executive in a development company that built the Staples Center in LA and 2 Las Vegas mega resorts, the MGM Grand and the Stratosphere, though he doesn't like to talk about it. Con Marshall, who's been the information director at Shadron State College for close to 40 years, thought that Bird's accomplishments warranted a human interest piece in the school paper, The Eagle, but Bird would not participate. Neither would he concede to an interview with George Ledbetter for the Shadron Record, nor would he concede to an interview with me. I'd never met Sandy Bird, but I knew his brother Brown, a surveyor, and I was acquainted with another Bird brother, Colin, who had a reputation as a roaring drunk and was also a surveyor. Although I never talked to Colin, I had seen him on several occasions swiggered off his Pins Varoli at the Red Zone, which is just across the street from where he lived, 4 buildings south of Hottie's apartment on Bordeaux. Tom, my son, and I drove past the trailer onto the Bird Ranch along the dusty, bumpy dirt road about the halfway along to Sandy's house. We came upon a man pitching hay in the back of the pickup truck. He was a very stiff chap with a Wild Bill Hickok mustache, sunburned neck, and a crooked spine. The type that would send, well, that's something that had to be explained. I stopped the car, rolled down my window, and said, hello. He lowered his fork, tipped up the brim of his black cowboy hat, and sauntered over. I introduced myself and my son. I'm Slim Butts, he said. I've heard of you, I said. Oh, you have, he said. You're the one who found Hadia. His expression soured and he looked away. I asked him if he might tell me where to find his boss, Mr. Sandy Bird. Just saw him go by on his rhino, he replied. Might be home by now. Anything I can help you with? I wanted to look at the site where Hadia was found. I'm running a book, I said. He scowled. What for? Well, it's an interesting case. You keep my name the fuck out of it. Now Slim was stalking away, his body contracted to the left, stiff as a stereotype or a man made of wire, the pitchfork on his shoulder pointed at the sky. I know it must have been hard, I called to him, finding the body. It wasn't hard, he replied, turning back once more with a sneer. I'm just tired of people asking me what I think. We left him with a thanks and drove the rest of the way to Sandy Bird's house, and though there were a number of vehicles outside parked under the shade of the deck, including Sandy's Yamaha Rhino, no one answered the door. The next day we went over again, and again no one answered the door. A few days later, Dawes County Sheriff Sean Connigan showed me on a map where Hottie had been found, then drove me up the road to Sandy Bird's place and pointed down at the culvert where the deed had been done. It was possible but not practical to drive down there if you had a four-wheel drive unit. The sheriff who had a four-wheel drive unit chose not to. He said he was good friends with Sandy Bird and would get me permission to walk on Bird's property if I liked. I thought I would. Eventually I said, and we did. But privately I didn't want to take the risk of having him say no. I wanted to have at least one good look at the site before putting everyone on alert. Sheriff Connigan drove me back down into town, dropped me off at the courthouse, and wished me luck. The next day, Tom and I decided to walk from CSC, Chatham State College, trying to retrace Hottie's steps. I surmised that his possible route that night would have begun at math and science where he taught. So I parked in the lot, we crossed the football field, and hiked up the only marked trail. If Hottie, who had no car and whose bicycle was behind his couch, walked from campus, this had to be the route, the long way around he would have taken, I kept insisting to myself. Our dusty golden retriever trotted up ahead, chasing grasshoppers and snacking on bean poop, as my son has labeled the wildlife scat along the way. There was a sign up ahead along the steep, narrow, and sinuous trail, danger, falling trees, keep out. The fire was so hot in this area, it destroyed all the forest, the thin, what do they call it? It's a light forest. It destroyed all the forest. It hasn't regenerated. The fire was so hot in this area that telephone poles burned to stumps, and the scorched ponderosas are snapped in half or lying on their sides, their muddy roots in the air. My tireless son, even though he didn't know where he was going, took the lead as always, and I had to direct him and point. Today, Tom carried with him an old metal toy police helicopter. He marched ahead, unafraid of anything that might be lying in wait: coyotes, snakes, strangers in black hats, surly ranch hands, old age, prairie dragons, or falling trees. I'm so hungry I could eat the whole earth, he said, towing a stink bug struggling through the dust. Just don't eat that stink bug. That's a girl stink bug. How can you tell? It has a long head. When we get back, we'll have lunch. What do you want? Old McDonald's. We went to McDonald's yesterday. You can't eat that stuff every day. It isn't good for your heart. I don't have a heart, he replied. I have a square. Why do you have a square? Girls have hearts, he said. Boys have squares. It isn't good for your square then. Okay, French toast, he said with a sigh, and orange juice. We made our way up through the waving sunflowers, the snowberry buffalo grass, and the dead falling black trees, widowmakers as they are sometimes called, for their tendency to break and fall without warning. To the undiscriminating eye, all this prairie grass looks the same, swaying golden all about like the underwater hair of Shelley Winters in Night of the Hunter. But look more closely and you'll see dozens of varieties: threadleaf sage, little blue stem, blue gramma, needle and thread. The terrible grass fires had burned much of this area, and we found several easy places where the fences were down to cross onto Sandy Bird's property. Tom and I surprised 5 mule deer that bounced away like spring toys without looking back. This was the herd of 5. There were 2 other regular herds in this area, their numbers fluctuating from season to season, but at present there was also a herd of 7, another of 13. Tom was delighted. Off to the east was the water tower written with the name of the town. It's C, a crescent moon. At the top of the crumbling limestone bluff, I could see Sandy Bird's house. We now stood at the highest point in these hills, much higher than Sea Hill behind us. Down below to the left was the trailer and the large corral. From this vantage point, I saw that the only way Hadia could get to where he was found that night, unless he walked all the way up the road that led to Sandy Bird's house, was to cross the large corral that led to a trail that ran along the electrified fence. I understood that the trailer had been occupied on December 4th, 2006, the night of his disappearance. But at that point, I had not yet learned who the occupant was. Taking into account Steve's reticent and cautious nature, and he also had a hip implant, had a titanium hip replacement just recently. I doubted very strongly that he would have hiked past that trailer and gone up the winding private dirt road that leads to Sandy Bird's house. I doubted even more strongly that he would have tried to climb or squeeze through the wires of that electric fence. To walk where he ended up, he would have also had to cross the large corral adjacent to the trailer, facing not only the possibility of livestock, but the certainty of their excrement. If Hadia had gone the way Tom and I had just come, the long way around, sacrificing utility for stealth, it seemed likely that he'd travel alone. If he'd gone past the occupied trailer and up the road toward the birdhouse, it supported the possibility that he'd had an escort who knew the area and would not arouse suspicion or draw attention. If someone driving him up the road, he could have also avoided the corral. Perhaps Hadia was unwilling or unconscious because he was burned alive. It was determined that he was burned alive. Or unconscious passenger in that person's vehicle. Of the many questions I had at this point, determining Hadia's route that night was the most important. As I stood looking down on Bird's Ranch, I thought about Hadia taking this route that Tom and I just walked and how it was just too long, more than a mile, rough and roundabout for him to navigate on such a cold and inhospitable night. Nevertheless, we pressed eastward, staying as best as we could out of view of Sandy's place. About a quarter of a mile down a steep embankment from the main road, we arrived at the hollow where Professor Hadia had spent the majority of the winter. There were a few trees, elms and cottonwoods, and I couldn't think of one reason he'd set up camp in a thicket of buffaloberry, whose thorny tree-like shrubs grew no more than 8 feet high at any point. This area, like much of Bird's land, had been spared to fire. It was more secluded than I expected, walled in, the ground fertile and damp, enough that I suspected we were standing at the bottom of an old dried-up pond. In spite of the brush and trees, the wind through the western aperture rushed down upon us. I couldn't picture Hadia hiking all the way out here by himself, whether he came up the dirt road or took the long way around, at midnight, in pitch darkness, onto private property, the air temperature approaching zero, carrying charcoal, accelerant, booze, and who knows what else, then starting a campfire and tying himself to a tree. Then again, the bottled schnapps that he bought at the Highway Express around 10 p.m. of his last day among the living indicated that he'd very probably been drinking that night. I've performed some amazingly regrettable feats under the influence, including suicide attempts. Not that I'm strong in math, but there are certain reliable, time-tested formulae. Alcohol plus X equals no Y. He was also of Finnish descent, I'm told. Depression is the national disease of Finland. This is just a place, I reminded myself, but I couldn't resist a wave of grief, a pang of mortal awe. I knelt for a moment, a grasshopper on wings clattered clumsily past. A nervous white bird, the type you often see down along the railroad tracks or crushed out on the highway, flashed past and gave out a warning scream. Tom did not know why we were here. I didn't try to explain. The air smells very difficult here, he said. So.
It's 4:55.
Oh, that's it? Oh, dear. Oh, questions. I read too long, didn't I?
You're fine. You can ask questions.
Oh, okay. How are you? How's everything going? Are there any questions? No, I guess we're...
What's the title of your documentary?
It's the same title. I'm a Terror of the Hot Plains of North. Very easy to remember. I always try to pick... I've got... The Word Away was a lot better, but people still have trouble with that. Yeah, and if it's not... I mean, it's all over the place. And a lot of people don't like it because the trailer indicates it's going to be a true crime thriller. And he did a study of the town instead, just because the footage leaned that way. So there are two general complaints. One is that I'm in the damn thing, and I can't blame them. And the other one is that there's just not enough hardcore true crime stuff. When you watch an hour of forensics, let's have fun with forensics or whatever, it's always the carpet fibers, and the guy is caught in the end after they find the bloodstains and they put it in the back of the car, and then you feel good and you can go to bed. Most murders don't work like that. You know, there's hundreds of thousands of unsolved murders lying out there, and many more suicides that were not suicide. Suicide is very, just a way to, just a way to get rid of everything, get rid of the killer, get rid of the lousy investigation, and so on. Any other questions? So what class? Oh, I shouldn't ask. Anyway, they're playing tonight. They got Second Avenue back together. They lost interest for a while. They just didn't seem like going on after you left. They just lost, all of their purpose. But they've regrouped, and so.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah. Did he text you today?
Yeah, we missed him a lot. So.
Okay, good. No. Any yes.
Just how did you decide that you were going to get into that murder slash?
Well, he lived right around the corner from me, and I was not satisfied with the two investigations, one by the police and one as a missing persons, and then one by the state patrol as a murder. And so it wasn't the state patrol's fault. They got attenuated evidence. They got evidence 95 days. The body was just, there was nothing left.
Was you afraid? He lived around the corner, so you were afraid of him?
No, I'd only encountered him once. I didn't know. I'd only encountered him once. He was there for 3 months, so he was not a friend of mine. Any other questions? Yeah.
How did you overcome your suicidal thoughts?
Just getting perspective, that's all. It helped to get married and have a family. I was so dedicated to becoming a writer, I didn't have room for anything else, which is great. I mean, for getting something done. But then at the end of the day, you're alone, and you haven't really produced anything that's, tangible. Maybe lots of words on a page, maybe you won a prize or something. People might recognize you, but that's pretty thin stuff. So yeah, so really marriage, and a child was probably the salvational period and all that. That happened to me late. I didn't get married till I was, long ago, 46. Something like that. I got married when I was 46. And my first novel published when I was 48. I'm just a really, really slow grower. And you have to get your proper relationship with the cosmos, however you're going to work that out. If you believe that it's a random universe and we're all just particles, then it's going to be a long haul. But if that's what you believe, then I have believed that for a long time myself. But it just doesn't really explain very much. Any other questions? I see you again. We'll have dinner. We're having dinner. Excellent. Can we drink martinis? Okay, I guess.
Writing as much as you were before?
I write every day. It's my.
Is it like an 8-hour day or?
Oh no, 4 hours about it. Ask Neil. You've only got so much in the well. There were periods when I was living alone when I wrote 10 hours a day. But you're pumping a dry well. You're not producing anything. There's nothing. So yeah, 3-4 hours broken up. And I write every day. It's the only time that it's my time. It's the only time I feel really. I mean, my life is good, and I'm not complaining. But it's the only time. It's the only real vital time. Small C creation. Creativity is what we all live for. I mean, there's the big C, and then there's the next C is childbirth and taking care of the children, and then there's the little C, which is watching Bob Ross videos and saying, God, I can't make a tree like that at all. Bob Ross, yeah. I don't know why he lives on. Why does Bob Ross live on? Do you know what Bob Ross is? Yeah, see, I don't know. I guess it's because he's everywhere.
People like Bob Ross because it's like meditation.
And it makes it look easy. This is something that we all know is difficult. Painting is difficult. Writing is difficult. Songwriting, poetry. It's difficult. And to make it really come off and ring and sing and all that stuff, to haul magic down out of the stars and the rest of that business, it's hard. But Bob just says, just get that.
What a little star. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's make a tree.
And that, whatever that chromium
Happy
white,
little tree.
chromium white and those brushes, those big crude brushes. We're all afraid because we know that Renoir, even when he was arthritic and he had to tape his, his brush to his hand, he used those tiny little brushes. Every stroke was pain, and that's what art is. No, not Bob. Get out that big brush and just whipping this thing around. So yeah, that's good too. Anything? Yes.
What got you into writing?
I don't know. I was just bent. I think I'm bent that way. I was a weird, shy kid, and I excelled in language and words, and I was abstract. And I like to read too. I just read. So so it was kind of natural. And everything I did in school went unnoticed. Basically. But I was a good student. They went unnoticed. But if I got a paper, people would get excited about it, and I'd always get an A. So I said, well, okay. Maybe that's my thing. Yeah.
How old were you when your first book got published?
I was, I think I was 48. Was I 46, 48, something like that? Way too late. Everybody knows that great novelists publish when they're 20, in their 20s, and they're pretty much done. But they're just like rock stars, They're done young, and then they live, shabby, self-destructive lives, and they finally end it in the bathtub, but that's not true. That's not true. If you're going to master your craft, it just takes a long time, especially a novel. And people give me crap for my novels, because my novels are, the novel's my first love. It's the hardest thing to do, and it's the thing I enjoy the most when it's done right. But 1 out of 1,000 novels is done right. They're just impossible to write, It's really hard. We were talking about why she's writing an essay about her experiences in counseling, and she wonders if she should move away from her own experience. But she wonders what the point would that would be. And really, this is my rule for writing. If I have a story to tell experientially about my own ideas, the people I've known, the real feelings that I've had about things, I can translate it much more easily than if I just start making things up or extrapolating those experiences into a realm that's not felt. Did I answer your question? Oh, yeah, I really did, didn't I? Yeah. Novels are hard though. But I can say, but my next 2 books are going to be novels. And I wrote Torpedoes d'Amour, which was 6 stories that people liked, won an award, and they were all the same place with the same people. So I just built transitions, and then I expanded some of the theme work, and it's okay. It's okay, but I took it down. It just didn't jump, didn't spark, didn't have anything. I want to be able to have an effect on the reader.
Why that title?
Which Torpedoes d'Amour? Oh, it's just French for the torpedoes of love, right? And it's about, it's from the short story, not the short story, but the essay Torpedoes d'Amour about my first love, Daphne Pololua.
Wasn't that in the Sunday?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And I was just in love with this little Hawaiian girl, and we went steady, and it didn't work out. And she broke up with me, and then ended up with a guy down the street a few weeks later, and just shattered my world. The Torpedoes d'Amour is the trouble that torpedoes. Love is the torpedo that sinks us all. And really, it's sex that's the torpedo that sinks us all. It sinks everybody. I mean, when you've got your tortellinis and you're standing in line, you get your buttermilk and your cashews, look to the right of the tabloids and look at those Torpedoes d'Amour. I mean, one celebrity after the next. Pow! My favorite comedian, Bill Cosby, just boom, 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 and it's his own fault. But who's firing the torpedoes? So that's what that's about. It's about it's about the casualties of what's loosely in this culture called love. That's not really love, but I think everybody knows. And those are the things that are most difficult for us to get over. Is the relationships that we form. There's deeply in the relationships that we form with people that get dismantled very quickly by married forces. have torpedoes anymore. I took it down, but I'm rewriting it all because I grew up in San Diego, which is a military town. I don't know. But anyway, I put a new plot in it. All the same human stuff, the memories, experiences, and all the rest, it's in there, but it has a new plot on it, a science plot. And it's not science fiction. Any other questions?
Did you say you were writing, your next two things that you were writing were going to be novels?
Yeah,
Are you
one is.
writing them at the same time?
Yeah, I go back and forth because I keep 7 or 8 projects going because they just stall on me. I can't solve a problem, so I move to another one. Or I just need distance, you know. Sometimes you just need perspective on our work. You know, because it's impossible. Some people are, I've gotten better at being objective about my work, but I can't be. But if you put something aside for a month or 2 or 3 and read it, then you can get as close to objectivity as you can get. You're away from it enough so you can see what's working and what's not, and where a problem might be that you can solve, or the solution to the problem may have come to you independently. As you know, most of your writing is done. I mean, I'm always taking notes with my hand. My hands are wet. Always, but it really bugs the hell out of me. My hands are wet, and I'm racing to put down an idea. I'm not writing. I've been brushing my teeth or shaving, or I just got out of the shower. My hands are always wet. So that's where the idea, the seminal idea, the solution to a problem might come. But it rarely comes from just staring at the page. If you're stuck. If you're flowing, that's great. If you've got something going, that's great. But if you're stuck, so you put it aside. And I just find it handy to have many other projects. So I'm going back and forth between Eggshell Palace and Torpedoes d'Amour, and an essay that I need to write to make money. I forget, but I need to make money, and I have to write an essay that I'm tired of writing because it's all about how terrible and sad my life is and how I struggle to be a writer. That's what they want, and I'm tired of writing that, but that's what they want. That's what the reader, that's Poe Ballantine. When you read a Poe Ballantine story, you know it's going to be full of bleeding and sorrow and guilt and hopelessness. But it's going to come together at the end. There's going to be, because I do move from disorder to order. I have that one, not necessarily, shuffling, smacking the deck completely together, but I don't like to leave things open when I'm talking about. Well, what I'm doing is doing work for other people. I'm trying to do work for other people, but I think I've done enough in that respect. All this exhibition of my psyche, exploration of my own, which is interesting to people because I can do that. It's one of my skills, but I'm tired of doing that. I want to do something else. But that's where the money is for me, and so I have to have an idea that I like, and I have to have a place that I like, and there's a couple of people that are always interesting, and then I can sort of. And they'll hand it back to me and they'll say, not enough bleeding. But, oh, okay. Seriously. And they don't say it like that, but that's what they want. Because it's, it's personal confessional, right? It's an intellectual confession magazine. Left-wing intellectual confession magazine. That's what it's saying. And we get along great. I mean, that's what I write and that's what they publish. But I have 56 pieces in there. And I'm writing Sea Creature Town. 7 Days in a Sea Creature Town is a revisitation of the first Decora story that I wrote. I can't remember the name of it. So I have to come up with, different angles on it. But it's very close to, when you start repeating yourself and when you start imitating yourself, those are the 2 death knells of an aging writer. And there's and a lot of people don't have enough experience to be able to just keep working on different stuff. But I do, because I live in the world of ideas, and I spent 35 years broke on the road, being a damn fool. So I've got all that. I've got lots of material, and I can keep going back to that and reconstitute. So, any other questions? Anything else? Trevor, you got any questions? You never knew your dad, your friend's dad was like that, did you? He paints me my son's not read any of my work, and I don't want him to. So, later, he thinks I'm a pretty clean-cut, straight-looking guy. I've told him lots of stories, I've told him lots of stories. He's interested about my life on the road and working odd jobs and living in 60, 70 places and starting all over again in 2 weeks at a time or after 6 months. He knows all about that. But the decadent parts, the suicide parts, I don't. I don't see any reason to share that with him at this time. Yes?
How old were you when you got married?
I think I was 40, was I 46? Let's see, Tom is, he just turned 17, and we had him a year after, I'm 64, so, yeah, 46. 46, I had Tom when I was 47. Yeah, old father, old novels. I was cleaning the floors at Safeway, and I was also decorating cakes at Safeway, so that we could put him in daycare. And they were paying me $5.35 an hour, and we were paying $2.35 an hour for daycare. And so I just took him out, quit the cake decorating job, and we spent more time together. So as a writer, you get to spend all your time with your kid. That's one of the advantages. I mean, I couldn't support myself as a writer completely. I always had part-time jobs. But anyway, so don't give me a bad report. Or tell him, hey, we have a good relationship. We have a good relationship. Okay, is that it?
That's it.
That was just fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have books if you